I was playing in my second world championship with Team USA. We had, by most counts, the best team to ever play. And we got upset in the final and lost the gold medal to Canada. And the following week, I went back to my pro team in Boston and I broke my foot. So like at the time I lost what was considered the biggest game in like American lacrosse history. And I was, the top player on the team. And then I broke my foot and it was like, okay, my career's over. And I went into this like depressive state and was just up on my couch all day for 4 months. And my agency at the time was like, I think you should meet this sports psychologist that works with some of our other athletes. And that's where it started, but it was more focused on like, hey, your career's not over, you're 28, you're at the top of your game. This happens to a lot of athletes, you're going to be fine. And it led to other things like dealing with frustrations on the field, being more mindful and present in the locker room, building better relationships with teammates. And then that led me into meditation. And then I was using an app called Headspace at the time.
Yeah, I've used that.
Yeah. And my like kind of entrepreneurial mind was like, I wonder who's the guy who started this. What's the business like? Is it successful? So I looked up Andy Puddicombe and I read his story, and he was a converted Christian or some denomination over to a monk, and then found a business partner that he was helping just on the psychology side say, hey, let me leave my ad agency and I'm like selling Headspace right now. But
it's a story.
Yeah. And it was a story for me. And fast forward to, actually, you asked about 2020. So Red Bull was still one of my partners, and they knew that I'd been on the app for 7 years or so. And they connected me with Andy Puddicombe, and I had a private session with him, which was like a dream.
Right.
So yeah, life works its way out in so many different ways.
Wow. Well, I mean, I feel like the basis of Buddhism has so much to do with the self and accountability and going within yourself. And, I even just think about you starting the lacrosse league, Premier Lacrosse League, that it's about, you just said to yourself, kind of like you just did, well, why don't I just do it myself? Right? Why don't I just start the league? It's accountability. It's something you can do yourself instead of looking at it in the other way, which is it's someone else's problem, which there's so many wonderful things about all religions. I just think that, there's some downfalls too, and allowing putting your problem onto somebody or something else to solve it is just not going to fix it. And so if you were to look at lacrosse and say, oh, I can't believe this isn't bigger. I can't believe. And so instead it's like this mindset or this new paradigm that you live in where you go, how could I do this? What could I do to, it's like full accountability. And I think that as people, we're completely limitless, and it's totally our environment. It's our upbringing, as well as our friends and the people that we know, and our social situation and where we live. And there's so many things that sort of craft our opinion or perspective of how things are supposed to go, but it's limitless. And when you start to realize that, you just go, oh, I don't know, I'll just start a league then. To me, that feels like a branch of Buddhism in a way.
Yeah, in a way, for sure. I think that I mean, and to be honest, I was a part of the cohort of people that would always go, why isn't it better? Why don't they just do the work? Yeah. And man, for building a league, it actually was so much work, and more than we even accounted for. And there were many times where we kind of sat across the room from each other, and Mike and I had just been like, this is too much. And also, no wonder the former owners were in many cases like, fuck this, and we're not going to do this, and we'll just continue to invest bare minimum, and hopefully the pendulum swings in lacrosse's direction on its own, which historically has never happened in any league. Not the NBA, not the NFL, not Major League Baseball. There's no professional sport that has gained momentum from bottom-up growth. Those sports are actually Olympic sports, and they only come every 4 years. There's a reason why.
I saw lots of them, and I'm like, that's a sport?
There are so many amazing sports out there that haven't figured out the professional side of it yet. and they go away after college.
Well, then how do you do it? If it's not bottom up, then what is it?
That was the challenge. We were like, all right, we've got to raise capital. We've got to hire a bunch of hardworking employees to roll our fucking sleeves up every single day, take 20 no's every single day, and go out and try to build this thing. And it's going to take a ton of energy. It's going to be more difficult than it is easy, and will only get more difficult.
It's basically a startup.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's building a company. It's the same thing. If we weren't, as athletes growing up, so consumed by the fun of our sport and how much we enjoyed it, we would have taken a step back and been like, God damn, look how much work we're putting into this every single day. And it's sometimes the own fault of us as a league and athletes that we only often get depicted for their greatness and all of the progress. And that creates this false narrative in a way for people. I talked about it with Don Garber, who's become a mentor and friend, and he's the commissioner of MLS. And what they've done over the last 25, 30 years, and what we see now, is certainly not what it was in the 90s. And he still says, like, every day they're grinding and making decisions and figuring out how to solve COVID like we did and play games. And the other side of it is their athletes and the audience thinks that they sit at the top of an ivory tower and it's like, playing a video game and super fun. And it never is. It just isn't. It's hard.
So what makes a sport popular?
Oof. Well,
not wearing helmets.
Yeah, not wearing helmets. You've got to have meaningful distribution. So one of the reasons why we built the tour-based model in the first place is so we could get a network deal. Because if we went building from the ground up in cities with individual owners, we would have had to either rent out stadiums in each market or build stadiums, which would have taken more capital. The renting of venues makes it really difficult for any league to build their schedule. I mean, absent the NFL, which basically has carte blanche, like even the MLS that owns all their venues, they take till middle of January to announce their schedule because there's so many back and forth on optimizing who's home, who's away at what time. And then you go to the networks and say, here's our game schedule. Well, if you don't have any product market fit, if we're a startup, as I talked about earlier, i.e. ratings, we're not going to get a network deal because we have nothing to present in 2017 when Mike and I were pitching our story. So instead we went, this tour-based model means we're going to go to Boston and take out Gillette for 3 days. Do you have any windows that are available on NBC or NBC Sports that weekend? And if so, boom, that's when our games are. And so we kind of did like this inside out model to capitalize on how do you make it popular? Well, you get on TV. And then the second is you get brands to come in and invest. And we treat I say invest because we treat our sponsors like investors instead of sponsors. They're investing in the growth.
Do they get equity?
They don't. But like, that's how we treat them. Right. And like we plus them up, we give them a ton of value. We take care of them. Because we know it's a different type of investment that they're making. It's unproven, especially in the first 2 seasons. And then if you get your brand partners to come in and they're starting to market lacrosse like Gatorade's doing for us, then all of a sudden, like young kids that are seeing Gatorade typically market soccer, basketball, and football, they're going, oh damn, lacrosse. Maybe if I can be a Gatorade athlete one day, I'll have a lacrosse stick. And that's how you like build it from a media marketing standpoint. And then we always felt like if we could roll out the red carpet, if that was our version of that, by elevating wages, giving players equity, and being on TV, then the product on field is going to be kick ass. And people are going to want to watch lacrosse more because they like what they see.
I also think that it takes personalities.
Oh, no doubt.
I think that's probably what I was benefited from, was people knew me. People had a taste of my personality, at least one part of my personality, which is probably why people afterwards, when I interview drivers now, they're like, you seem really deep and spiritual and stuff. Is that new? I'm like, no. But there was no space for that. That wasn't something to promote, but people still saw a side of my personality. And so they can decide to cheer for you or not. And so I think that's probably your popularity, is that people know you. Like, I watched enough videos that I get your personality to some degree. because I saw you in a raw form. I saw you being natural. I saw you at home. I saw you cooking. I saw you, I saw you talking to a group of people at a school. Like I can see your personality. And so, I've found that to be true too, in racing itself as well. When a driver, you don't always have to put it out there yourself. Like you said, sometimes there's enough opportunities to show it. But for ones who don't get that, that's why there's like YouTube sensations. They're not on TV. They're just showing their personality. And so if you have a cool skill, which all your players have cool skill, and then they show their personality, then people are going to follow and be curious. That's why Colton Hurd at the Indy 500 wanted to meet you, because he saw your personality. And so I've always thought this to be true, is that, people that aren't willing to be vulnerable, honest, raw, emotions up and down, whatever they are, and show them, and somewhat promote themselves and realize that doing the interviews and showing up to things is important. It's about the effort that you put in to show people who you are, to cheer for you.
It's one of you're 100% right. I mean, what really Jordan did, but you could say Magic and Bird to the NBAs of the 80s, was astronomical. I mean, the NBA in the 80s had a horrible reputation, and they couldn't fill arenas. And then those stars came in, and David Stern at the time, rest in peace, switched his strategy from building up teams to creating enlargement of players. And if you look at what Conor McGregor did to the UFC, even though they were trajecting upward, and what you were doing in racing, and you see personalities that take a sport to another level. Mm-hmm. Some of those, it's like finding a needle in the haystack to a degree of the caliber of people that I just mentioned, where it hits perfectly, best at what they do, amazing personality, relatable, ambitious, and you're like, fuck, this is amazing. And but we're still living in an era where if you're a professional athlete, if you want to get as much out of your, in the grand scheme of things, short career, you've got to step up in the form of media, and you've got to be available to your audience. Many athletes don't want to do that. They just want to focus on their craft, and that's okay. They'll just never reach the point of economic prosperity or notoriety. That's just honestly part of our business. If we believe that we're a show business, which sports just are, then you can participate for skill only, but you're just not going to bust through the ceiling